Virtual panels are now the norm. It's a great way to put people in a room that are geographically dispersed. My name is Kristen Arnold, and I am a master facilitator and a leading authority on moderating panel discussions. And in this video, we are going to be talking about the best practices of virtual panels. Okay, so here's the inconvenient truth. If you can't moderate a panel in the face-to-face environment, you won't be able to do it very well in the virtual environment. I know, it's sad but true. So in this video, we are not going to focus on how to moderate a panel. We are going to be focusing on what is unique about virtual panels and the best practices that you need to know if you're organizing a panel, moderating a panel, or you're a panelist on a virtual panel discussion. So let's dive right in. Even before the panel starts, obviously when it's a virtual panel, technical setup is of paramount importance. These days, I think people are fairly used to it. However, that being said, never assume. I find that there are some people who think they know about the technical capabilities, but don't. So you always want to do something to make sure that everybody is on the same technology page. First and foremost, you want to test all of the technology aspects. Their video, the quality of their video, the way that they have it framed, what's in their background, where are they positioned, audio, making sure that there's good audio, making sure that there's no other background noise going on. Like, this is all in the technical setup, that they know how to mute themselves, that they know how to turn on their video. Are they watching the chat box, or is the moderator going to be watching the chat box, or do you even have an ombudsman watching the chat box? All of these technical kinds of things. Are you going to be using some of the technical features on the platform, such as, are you going to be using polling? Are you going to be using a word cloud? Are you going to be using a whiteboard? These are very simple tools that almost all of the platforms have now. They might even have more sophisticated tools. If you are going to use them, number one, make sure that the panel organizer knows that, because sometimes it costs them money to unlock those tools, and that the audience will be familiar with it, because you might be spending 5 minutes just getting your audience to log in on the app so that they can do a 2-second poll. So understand the technology features, what it takes, what it doesn't, what's the familiarity, does it cost anything? Understand everything about that platform. So it's more than just the platform, it's also the internet connection. Now, some people are in rural areas. They don't have great Wi-Fi. You can test it out. This is why I strongly suggest you test it out. They'll go, oh, that's fine. I'm on Zoom all the time. Well, if you're doing high definition broadband to a conference center, that dial-up, it's not dial-up anymore. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I would highly recommend that they go to a shared workspace, someplace where they know that there's going to be an awesome internet connection. Finally, Murphy's Law, it's bound to happen, and it's going to happen during your panel discussion. So you want to make sure that your panelists have kind of a troubleshooting kind of guide. What happens if they can't get on? Who do they call? What happens if they can't get into the green room? Who do they call? Where's a secondary way for them to enter in? What's your backup plan if they're having problems? I did have a friend of mine who was in that rural neighborhood, and he got on, we all got on 30 minutes early, and he was being broken up all over the place. So we just said, can you drive downtown? It was a 15-minute drive to his work office that he could, it was actually a friend's work office that he could set up his laptop, and he's like sweating bullets. But it was much more effective because he had a stable internet connection, because we got online a good 30 minutes ahead of time. We didn't have that problem during the test because there were no kids home from school. But the panel was being done at 4 p.m. his time, and suddenly when all the kids come home from school, they're all sucking up the bandwidth. So we did not actually see that until we were getting right online. So you want to think through what are some of the challenges that people might have in this virtual setting, and make sure that you give them backup plans. The other piece that I find to be even more crucial for virtual is that the panel moderator is fully briefed. A lot of times the moderator gets briefed on who the panelists are, what the topic is, who's in the audience, and then they're left on their own devices to put the program together. In this case, I would suggest that at the same time that you're briefing the moderator, is that you also take an extra special amount of time to brief the panel moderator on the capabilities and the limitations of the system that you've selected. They're all slightly different. Some moderators have more comfort and more use with one platform versus another. I'm not going to get into whether anyone's better or worse. These days, they all have pretty much the common features. However, the usability and the way that the panel moderator can use them to help forward the promise of the panel is going to be slightly different. And their own comfort level. Like if they're used to using Zoom and suddenly now we're on Microsoft Teams and they're not used to Microsoft Teams, well, they need a little bit more of a comfort level on how do we use that platform, because there are some differences. Finally, with the moderator, you need to talk about emergency contingencies. What do we do if that person has spotty internet? Do we let them continue on? Or do we just say, we don't think that this is going to work? There are lots of decisions that you should make if things go a little south. If you can have those contingency plans in place beforehand, that is awesome. The one other thing about virtual panels is sometimes you have something called a remote panelist. Let's say we have 4 panelists and we have one of them who is beaming in there. And literally I've seen a television screen taking the place of a person sitting in a chair. It's fine, but how is that going to work? And usually there's some latency between what the panelists are saying and what that remote panelist is hearing. And then there's some latency on if they want to, chime in. And there are just a couple of things that you need to work out ahead of time. So these are challenges when you have a virtual environment. Okay, so I am sure that you have had your challenges in the virtual environment. I'd love to hear from them. If you put them in the comments below, that would be awesome. I'd love to hear kind of from a technology point of view, what are the challenges that you've had from the virtual environment and how did you overcome those challenges? And while you're down there, why don't you hit that like button and subscribe button. We'd love to have you continue to get these tips on how to moderate a panel. Okay, so we've talked about the technology side. Now let's talk about the content side. Interestingly enough, I think when people are in a face-to-face environment, they're much more liable to just kind of show up and let's have a great conversation. Whereas in the virtual panel space, I see a little bit more deliberate intentionality. And I love that because the more intentional you can make your panel program, the better off you're going to be. So in a virtual panel, again, what is the promise that you're making to the audience? Who are the panelists? Make sure that you create a great structure and format. Some things that you can do in the face-to-face environment you can't do virtually, and some things you can do virtually that you can't do as easily in the face-to-face environment. So in fact, I wrote an entire book devoted to the different things that you can do to add more pizzazz to your panel that adds engagement and interaction. It's called 123 Ways to Add Pizzazz to a Panel. And at the bottom of each of these interactions, I actually put, here's the virtual variation. Here's how you can adapt it and modify it to a virtual panel. There's always a bit of a nuance. So if you think you can just take a run of show or an agenda from a live face-to-face panel and slap it into a virtual panel, you are woefully mistaken. You do need to tweak it slightly. and intentionally. The other thing about the virtual panel is people space off much faster than in the face-to-face environment. So I normally talk about chunks of time between 6 to 10 minutes that you need to shift the energy in the room so that people stay engaged. And it's primarily based on television and radio. We have commercials about every 6 to 10 minutes. I would say in the virtual environment, it's about every 6 minutes. You need to be doing something, or people will start multitasking. Not that they don't do that in the face-to-face environment, but that keyboard, that screen right in front of them is just, oh, so tempting. Okay, so let's talk about specifics about virtual panels, best practices. I do think that there is a better opportunity to engage the audience when you have a virtual panel because you have something called the chat box. Yay. Now, sometimes the chat box can be distracting, but honestly, it depends on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to create community within the industry or the association, having the chat box and other people knowing who's on and chatting with each other and making comments about what the panelists are saying is awesome. I encourage the chat box. As a panel moderator, I might actually be looking at the chat box and weaving in something that might be said into the panel. Sometimes you might think, oh, Kristen, I can't do that. That's a lot of multitasking. Okay, you'll have somebody called an ombudsman, somebody who is looking at the chat box, and you have given that person an opportunity to pause, to interrupt you and say, we have an interesting thread going on here in the chat box. I'd like to pose a question on behalf of the audience. It's so awesome. It's great. It's more than chat though. You generally have a Q&A box. You can invite people to raise their hand, to ask a question, understand the tools of your platform so that you can get that audience engagement that people crave. Virtual panels also are a lot more time sensitive. People will arrive on time maybe a minute or two later, and they will be gone at the end, or maybe even a minute or two early, because people schedule virtual calls much more tightly than if you were at a conference and now you're on a break and now you need to go get another cup of coffee or use the restroom or meet up with somebody. So you want to be much more intentional about starting on time and ending on time and managing the time. One of the things that drives me crazy is, oh, we don't have time for Q&A. You know, the only reason why you don't have time for Q&A is because you as the panel moderator did not manage the time effectively to save time for Q&A. So especially in the virtual world, it's really important that you manage all of the segments, that you think through, how is this all gonna play out, and that you manage that time crisply and concisely. So let's talk about facilitating discussion in the virtual world. Just like in the face-to-face world, people are kind of used to not tripping over each other. It's what I call the ping pong effect. I'm gonna ask a question of panelist A, they answer it, then I give it to B, they answer it, and then I give it to C, and they answer it. And it's like a ping pong match. And that holds true particularly in the technology space, the virtual space, because people don't want to step over each other. And so what I try to do in the virtual space is encourage people to show interest in adding in. And I'll do that by saying, please lean in to the camera and I'll call on you. So my role as a panel moderator becomes more of a referee about who's talking. Now, some more sophisticated panelists might actually as a panelist is taking a breath, might jump in and say, I'd like to add something. I always encourage my panelists to be additive and not repetitive. And if they're going to disagree, which I hope there's some disagreements, that they disagree respectfully. So it's a little bit harder in the virtual environment for people to have their voice heard because the technology actually shuts one microphone on and shuts another microphone off. But you want to talk about it with your panelists and find out what their degree of comfort is in being more conversational than you having to be kind of that referee. It's different levels of experience, quite frankly, that will dictate what your role is and how you facilitate that lively conversation. The other thing is that you are in a much better position to figure out how people are talking in a virtual environment. Now, let me explain this. Is that when you're in a face-to-face, you have a general feel about how much airtime each panelist is getting and how many times they started talking or followed up talking. You're not really in a position to kind of keep score. You are keeping score in your head, and you should be, but it's pretty hard to do. In the virtual world, it is very easy to do, because I can actually have a little scorecard next to me that I can tick off when somebody is starting the conversation, or they add to, or they interrupted, and I can actually, in Zoom particularly, I can move the boxes about who has spoken the last. And so if I haven't heard from Matilda, I can say, Matilda, I haven't heard from you. Would you like to add something on this? It's awesome. I am much more aware of airtime in a virtual environment than I am in the face-to-face environment. So there's a plus. Not only should you understand the technical setup, but you should understand who you have for technical support. Like the person you go to when something goes wrong, or when you need somebody to be your ombudsman, somebody who's looking at a chat box, or who's moderating the questions that come in from the Q&A box. That's the person that I call the ombudsman. You might have somebody who's actually handling the technical details of the technology. That's the person that I would call the technician. You might also actually have a producer. Now, the producer is somebody who's managing the AV and the technical, and maybe there might be some stuff with the app, but they are kind of have the whole production value. The technician and the producer might be the same person. They might be different. And then finally, what is the point of contact? Who do you call when things go south on a technical basis? From a content basis, the actual event, that would be your panel organizer. That's understood. But from a technology basis, who do your panelists and your panel moderator talk to when they're having problems? So we've just talked about some best practices about in the actual panel discussion. Before we get into things that you can do after the panel, I'd like to just check in with you. Is there anything that you do from a best practice standpoint, or something that you got reaffirmed, or something you want to start doing? Just put them in the comments section. Would love to hear from you. And while you're there, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe button. Thanks. Okay, so your panel discussion was awesome. People are raving about it. Now there's stuff that actually you can do in the post-production environment of a virtual panel discussion, which is just awesome because it's been recorded, literally. In a face-to-face, it may or may not be recorded. In a panel discussion, you have it recorded. So there's lots of things that you can do with that recording. With that recording, you can share the entire recording with the participants, or maybe even the people who weren't there. You can cut it up into bite-sized social snacks. You can take snippets out of it and repurpose it into an article for your newsletter or magazine. You might have heard a resource that was quoted off the panel and share that resource with the rest of the audience. There are so many things that you can do to repurpose that recording or take information from it and then build on it so that you're continuing to share that information with the audience. After the event, don't forget to have an evaluation form. Like, what did they think? You might have heard in the virtual hallway that it was awesome, we love that. Well, okay, maybe you can have an evaluation. I'm not a huge fan of smiley face evaluations, but in the panel world, that's pretty much what you're gonna get, unless you continue the conversation and you ask 15 days later, 30 days later, what did you do? What did you implement as a result? What were your key takeaways as your last question? People put it in their chat box, and then 15 days later, 30 days later, you come back to the audience and you say, so these are the things that you said you wanted to do. Did any of you do them? We encourage you. Here's some follow-up materials to support that. There's so many things that you can do. It's just awesome. Makes my heart be happy. Can you tell? The other thing that you can do in a virtual panel that I highly recommend is that you do some kind of panelist and panel moderator debrief, because in the face-to-face, they're all sitting in the room still and people are talking to them, and then there's kind of like this nice high five, we did a great job, and you see each other in the hallway still throughout the meeting. But in the virtual world, here's what happens. When you're done, you're done. And it's like crickets. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like, so did that go over well? Like, I got no feedback. I have no idea. I know people were in the audience. I know some people asked questions. How'd we do? So it's really important that you schedule some kind of debrief to find out what went well in the panel and reinforce that for your future panels. What could we do differently so that the panel moderator and the panelists and the organizations learns from that and says, oh, okay, well that makes sense. We should do that differently in the next time. So make sure that you actually schedule a debrief even before the end of the panel. Either you ask for people to stay on it, or you schedule it like a week later. Do something that you are able to get some feedback from the panel moderator and the panelists. And don't forget about the technical review. Have a meeting, and I don't think you need to get the panelists involved, but the panel moderator and the producer and the meeting organizer to have a technical review. What worked well with the technology? What didn't go so well? How can we leverage what went well? How can we prevent what didn't go so well for the next time? That's how we learn. So there are so many moving parts to a virtual presentation. This video was about some of the best practices specifically for virtual panels. I hope that you like this. There's a lot of moving parts to moderating a panel, period. And if you're interested, I have a free 7-part video series that you can take at www.howtomoderateapanel.com. Thanks for watching.